Hello, I'm Jeremy Wilson from C Systems Global, and this talk is called Don't Leave Me This Way. And that's about how to use your data to keep and grow your members and donors in this changing, challenging economy. What I want to think about is the data-driven organization. Challenge you about the way that you view the data that you already hold or should be holding and probably have somewhere in your organization. Help you understand the value of that data that you already hold, or the potential of the data, the potential value of the data that you probably have floating around in various places, and how you can use that data to better understand and service your members, with the idea of using that to help you grow and retain your members as we go through this. So let's talk about the data-driven organization. Here's an idea of what we think the data-driven organization does. The data-driven organization will decide. They'll use the data they hold to make decisions. They'll draw conclusions. They'll make decisions. Everything that they decide, every conclusion they draw, will be supported by the data that they hold. They'll obviously analyze that data. They'll have dashboards, they'll have data models, they'll infer, they'll predict, they'll understand that, they'll be able to deep dive, they'll be able to manipulate that data to give them the models that they need to be able to make to support those decisions. That data will be clean. Clean data is absolutely vital, and clean data is everyone's responsibility. If I'm sat there using data, it's no good me spotting an error and thinking, oh, someone else is going to go away and fix that for me. It's my job. If I see a problem with that data, I should do something about it. And there should be reports that help ensure that that data is clean and of good quality. The data-driven organization will also organize and locate their data. Data inevitably ends up in multiple places. We have this ideal of having everything in one place, but we always end up with these different systems, with spreadsheets, with other third-party systems that are there for very good reasons, but it makes that whole data thing that much more difficult. So they'll organize data, they'll bring those pieces of data together in a logical way. And finally, the data-driven organization will have this big picture vision of their ideal data. They'll know with the location and the organization piece where things are, but also that plays into system selection, and we'll talk a bit about that at the very end. I'm not going to talk about all these points because I've only got limited time, but the data-driven organization will use data in a variety of ways. A key one is segmentation. Having enough metadata about your members, about your donors, in order to be able to slice and dice that data, to be able to make, instead of making decisions across everything, be able to specifically identify members in a particular area or donors in a particular area, so that because their input has, probably has more weight in a particular area. That segmentation is really important. We're going to talk a bit about service as we go through. How do you use your data to better service your members, better service your donors? And I'll show an example of that a little bit later on. Credentialing is another fun one. If you're a professional body, having that data that you need in order to be able to properly credential people, give them their professional accreditation, that's vital. So, thinking about what you already have, I'd like to start with actually saying, well, how much does it actually cost you to recruit a member or a donor? How much does it cost to bring that person in? It's not just that they, it's great if they just walk up to you and say, hey, I'd like to become a member, I'd like to give you some money. But more often than not, you've had to advertise, probably meetings about the advertising. You've maybe had to visit shows, or you've had to have someone knocking doors, or standing on a street corner with a clipboard, or cold calling people. There's a cost that you have had, there's money that you've had to spend in order to recruit that member or that donor. And so therefore, what's the cost when you lose that member, that constituent? Whether they are they've only been a member for 1 year, you probably haven't even recouped that cost of initially recruiting them. What about if they're valued, if they've actually been a part of your membership for a number of years, they've contributed, they're seen as a thought leader, and they suddenly go? What's the cost to you, not just in financial terms, but in terms of reputation, in terms of the wobble that other people have? Well, he's gone. Why have they gone? And the flip side of that is really, well, what would it have cost to retain that person? Is there something that you could have done? I'll talk a bit about people who are going to leave anyway as we go on, but what would the cost have been of retaining that member in the first place? Is there something you could have done, and how much would it cost you? And then at the end of that is, can you put a value on your data? I mean, obviously, there's a fine if you lose your data. GDPR's made us very aware of that. But the value of your data in terms of being able to drive those decisions, being able to structure the direction or direct your organization as you move forward, that data is really valuable, and it's very often overlooked as just this stuff that's held in our membership database or in our CRM. Actually, it has a whole heap of value on its own. And your data really holds the key to all the decisions that you should be making. You've probably got years of history in there. Some of that will be really raw. It's just numbers, it's just statistics that you need to plow through. But if you go through it, you should be able to see trends, you should be able to get to details. And so the real challenge in this is, how are you using that data to improve? How are you using that data to serve your members and understand your members? One of the things, there's been all sorts of talk during Chase about engagement and ways of measuring that and viewing that. I'd like to just pair it back to some real basics and just say, how are people engaging with your organization? And how is that engagement changing? The fact that this is what people did 2 years ago isn't necessarily what they're doing now. Events is actually a really good example of that. People were probably attending, or were attending, a whole heap more events a year ago, 2 years ago, than they are now. So what are they doing more of now? What are they doing less of now? You can't just, the raw numbers don't tell the whole picture, of course, but you've got to understand the background behind it. But having those numbers available is very important. And having targets around that engagement. It's no good just having the numbers and knowing what that number is, but actually having targets and saying, okay, we've got a target of engagement, or a target for event attendance, or a target for number of posts on our chat forums. Having those targets is very important, and measuring engagement and gauging engagement based on those targets. I'm going to show a couple of examples. This is the IVIS system. If you've not seen IVIS before, it's a great membership association management platform. If you are considering changing your association management platform or your donation management platform, then please make sure that you take a look at IVIS. Get in touch with us. We'd love to show you the system and show you what it can do for you. IVIS has this, but these figures and this style of analysis should be available in any system. If it's not, that's probably the time to start a conversation about a new one. But you should be able to do something similar to this in most platforms. This is engagement history. I'm looking at a member, Alex Morgan. I'm looking at a member level engagement, and I can see his engagement and see how his engagement has changed over time. I can see that in 2018 he had a large number of event registrations, and I can see that there were he made a certain number of donations. In 2020, that's changed quite significantly. He's made a whole load of subscriptions to our communities, our member communities, and he has actually attended a couple of our events before lockdown. So I can understand how this member has engaged, the things that are important to him, because that's the stuff that he is really getting involved in. But we can take that up to a higher level and look at engagement across all members. So I can see the various categories, and the idea of this funnel is that we want people to be leaders. And so, to use a fundraising analogy, we could use moves management to try and take people from the user level, the barely engaged level, right the way up to leadership, and move them through the various stages. And right down at the bottom, we can actually understand the engagement by component. And this is actually really important when it comes to budget discussions and that sort of thing. So if people say, okay, well, we really need to cut back the event budget for this year, well, you say, well, that's the way that the majority of people are engaging with our organization. That's a bad choice. What about one of these other areas? The flip side of that is volunteer attendance. You can see that's right down the bottom. Doesn't mean it should be cut. Maybe that's an area for focus. If you dive into the benefit that the people that have engaged in the volunteering side of it have got out of it, you might find that they're actually really engaged as a result of it. So that would be a great thing to push forward in order to drive more engagement. understanding your data, having targets, knowing what's driving that. It's the theme of what I'm really trying to get at here. Let's talk about the flip side of that, disengagement. Some disengagement is normal. People are going to leave. We've just got to accept that. People get older. If you're a membership organization, people get older, their career path changes, they hit retirement, they maybe don't want to be a member of a professional body anymore. Don't fight the battles you can't win, that you maybe need to say goodbye to those. But the thing that's important is targeting those who can be saved. So again, back to IRIS, we've got at-risk contacts. Now, in this example, we're categorizing people at risk as those who've had a high engagement score but haven't been engaged for at least 6 months. So in other words, they used to be really involved, but they've suddenly gone quiet. It might not take a great deal in order to bring them back, to get them engaging again. It's certainly worth a bit of follow-up, an email or a call or something to bring them back in. So let's talk about wider interaction. Let's using your data to improve the member experience. Let's talk about calls. When someone actually wants to call you, speak to someone within your organization, how do you greet them? Do you know them by name? And does everyone get the same experience? I'm just going to play a quick video that just talks about a call center experience. I'm going to very quickly show you how you can use the data you hold in your systems to personalize the experience that one of your members get when they ring you. So in a moment, I'm going to make a call to our helpline. It is going to look up my details automatically in the database. It's then going to go away and look at further information about me to try and discern the reason for my call. I get to say whether that is or is not the reason for my call, and depending on my response, the call will be routed to the best person that's able to help. And on the screen, you'll see the soft phone start to ring. When I answer it, my record will open automatically, and the system will say who is calling and the reason for the call. That's the information that we've gathered so far. At the end of the call, the fact that I called is automatically recorded back in the system. Let's call it now.
Thanks for calling the C Systems Member Helpline. Your call is being recorded and may be added to your member record. Please wait while I look up your details. Thank you for your patience. Am I speaking to Mr. Jeremy Wilson?
Yes, you are.
I can see that you're not a member. Would you like to speak to someone in the membership department?
Yes, please.
Thank you for calling.
So you can see that the incoming call, when I click answer the call, it will actually open the record up. And so I can now go away and deal with this member's query. And when I've finished with that query and I end that call, I am returned to their record and I can see their call history. So what we just showed was an off-the-shelf call center product that allowed us to integrate it with the data we already held. That was Amazon's Connect product, which is their own call center solution. But we were able to use the data that we held in IRIS to do a lookup of the phone number, identify who was calling, and then direct their call to someone who was able to deal with it. In that example, that was the member helpline, but it could have been that we identified them as a VIP on the basis of their previous interactions or the amount they've donated, and we could have routed them to a more senior member of staff who answers the phones versus sending them to the summer work experience intern who might not give them the same touchy-feely response that will get the engagement and keep them engaged. So that was one example. So at the end of that, do you survey your members? And is the survey response available alongside their member record? Maybe you use SurveyMonkey to do that. Now, in this example, I'll show what we've done with SurveyMonkey. The key here is that often that SurveyMonkey account might be held by the person who's responsible for setting up the surveys. They may well issue a report, but that analysis isn't available to everyone, so you can't see on a day-by-day basis what's the feedback from that latest event, or indeed, so this example I'm showing an analysis of a particular survey within within the IRIS system, but we're able to then drill down into the response to a particular respondent's response. So I could look at Pat Zimmerman's response and see the answers to all the questions, and indeed I could just look at a particular question and identify someone who gave the event a poor rating and may well want to follow up with Judy. I haven't had to go to the person that looks after SurveyMonkey to get access to that data. It's available to everyone, but I'm able to drill down into it in different ways. What about emails? Everyone sends email marketing. Maybe you use something like Mailchimp. And again, the information on the success or failure of that campaign is often held within Mailchimp, held within the marketing department, whereas actually it should probably come down into everyone else's remit. So again, here's Mailchimp integrated with the IRIS system, just to give you some ideas of if you're maybe not doing some of this with your mailing system, with your CRM platform, you probably want to be thinking about it because there's all sorts of benefits that you can gain from it. So in this case, we're seeing the overall emails that sent. We've got all the analysis available to authorized members of staff, but within the AMS without having to get the Mailchimp login. And we're able to drill down into the success of a particular campaign being Mailchimp's term for an email that's sent out. And indeed, I can then drill down and see all the interactions. So all the individual people that may be interacting with that email, and you'll see Nadine's name highlighted. If I jump across to Nadine's personal record within the system, I can see all her email responses. And just down here, I would actually be able to see the click and the links, particular links that she clicked on. So that data has been brought in. It's no longer sat in a silo. It's part of our engagement. It's part of this big picture, this big data that we can use to drive decisions and drive analysis. And that really brings me to my final point that I'd like to talk about, which is the data flow, that final bit in that brain that I had at the beginning in talking about the data-driven organization. I'd really urge you to think about data flow when you're beginning to select add-on systems. There's this lovely idea that you're going to buy a CRM that can do all these things and everyone's going to buy into it and going to use those functions. Reality is that people will fairly quickly come to you with very valid reasons why they want to use Mailchimp or SurveyMonkey or any of the other platforms that exist on the periphery. The key is that there has to be this big vision when it comes to selecting those systems, which of those add-ons you're actually going to authorize and purchase and allow people to use. And there has to be, one of the things that has to be is, can you get the data back into your primary system? Maybe can you push the data from your primary system out so that they've already seeded that system in an easy to use way, but then can you get that data back again without having to import spreadsheets, which is a really clunky way of doing it. And when you're thinking about that, have that big picture of how are you going to use that data. Don't just import everything just because it's there, but what data do you need in order to improve engagement and member retention? What data is going to be of real value to you going forward? That's the end of the data-driven organization. About the end of the key bit of the talk. A little bit about C Systems. If you don't know us, we've been around for 20 years now, delivering services and solutions to associations and non-profits worldwide. We're all over the place. So we're in the US, we're in Canada, we're in the UK. We support clients in Australia as well. So we operate help desk for a lot of hours of the day. And we've got sort of 30 staff, which means we've got people that can specialize in particular areas. Most of us have come from an association background ourselves, so we've been users or staff within an association ourselves. And our Connect suite of products. So I gave examples, I was showing screenshots. So those were our products, those are our integrations with IRIS, but we've got a load more that we've got available, but we are integrators with a variety of systems. So do come and talk to us if you have another survey platform that you'd like to use, or using a different association management system. Do come and talk to us, because that's our sweet spot, that level of integration. I do hope that talk's been useful. Please do visit the C Systems Global website, or do get in touch if you've got any questions. We'd love to talk to you. We'd love to help you. I hope you found this talk useful.